What's happening, Boot Junkies? Mike Delgadio here, back with another video on home studio setup for voiceover. Put on my headphones. Today we're going to talk about the dynamics of dynamic microphones. I am not an expert in dynamic microphones. I have a few. We're going to look at a few. We're going to talk about a few, and we're going to let you evaluate a few to decide if they're right for you. These are not necessarily appropriate side-by-side comparisons yet. So we're going to run through, we have 4 different microphones to listen to today, and we're going to make a comparison between them. The first 2 we have, and I have these both in here because they're both the same brand. These are 2 wildly opposite ends of the spectrum. But before that, let's talk about dynamic microphones. Dynamic microphones are different than condenser microphones. They have a different technology inside, and really what that technology isn't really the most important thing. The big distinction for us is 2 things. One, they don't require phantom power. So if you have a little switch that says plus 48 or phantom power on there, you switch it off. These do not require phantom power. And secondly, these have a different sort of sensitivity pattern to them, in that on a condenser microphone, they are very sensitive. And even if you're far away from the microphone, they still can be pretty loud. They fall off, but they tend to be more sensitive, right? The old saying about condenser microphones is they can hear a mouse fart 3 houses away. They're very sensitive microphones. Whereas dynamic microphones, they tend to fall off in sensitivity much more rapidly. So as you pull away from the microphone, they get quieter very quickly. We have 2 here. This is the RE27ND, and this is the RE635NDB. So opposite ends of the spectrum. These don't compete with each other. They're not made for the same purposes. This is like a radio studio broadcast mic. This is like a field news interviewing mic. Cardioid pattern, omnidirectional. This one will be equally sensitive all the way around. So it's good for interviews where you're passing the microphone back and forth and it doesn't have that sensitivity that goes back and forth. But as you can see, these don't sound anything alike. The RE27, full, robust. The RE635 is thinner, right? They just sound different. The expectation of quality is different. The durability is different. Both extremely durable microphones, but they're durable in different ways. They call this one the hammer because it's practically built like a hammer. You got to hammer nails with this thing. These are made to be knocked around, thrown around, taken out into the field, taken into far less than ideal situations, and they're going to work. They're going to work. News stations, field reporters, they're using something like the 635, and that's what they're for. These are both labeled as ND. The ND stands for neodymium, and it's the kind of magnet that's in there. So I'm not sure if there's an RE27 that's not an ND. I've never looked. That's just occurring to me. But the 635 has an ND and a non-ND version, and it really speaks to how hot the mic is at a certain gain level on your preamp. So if your preamp is set to 9, this one will be louder than the 635. It's just the magnet that's in there makes it a more sensitive microphone. But as you can see, these 2 microphones sound totally different. This one it's huge, 1, it's really heavy for 2. You wouldn't use this one out in the field. The RE27 doesn't make sense to use it out in the field. It's meant to hang from this big shock mount and hang right in front of like a DJ's face or a radio host's face as a studio microphone. Whereas this one, the 635, is meant to be used out in the field. These are both really vocal mics. The RE27 you can probably use for instruments, but I do think of both of these as being for capturing the spoken word at different qualities in different reasons, in different situations. This one is out in the field. Price differences, this one's like $500 and this one's like $150. For the 635, you're paying as much for the durability and versatility of the microphone as its sound quality. They don't sound bad. They sound different. Oh boy, do they sound different. But this one is made to be used in a different situation. So the tone you can expect from that microphone is different. Two microphones, both from Electro Voice. I'm going to sub in a different mic for the 635 just to get our next comparison. Let's go. Okay, so now we have two microphones that you would normally hear compared to each other. This is the Shure SM7B microphone. Now, the first thing I note right off the bat, let me just go check. Let me just go adjust something real quick. The thing I could notice right off the bat was that the Electro Voice was way hotter, and the gain on my preamp, this one for the 7B, was turned almost all the way up. The neodymium magnet makes this a much hotter microphone, so I just turned that back a little bit to try and get them so that they sound even. Under normal circumstances, this is at the same spot on your preamp. The EV, the RE27, is a louder mic. The Shure SM7B requires a ton of gain, and I'm giving it the beans with this one. I've got my preamp essentially turned all the way up for the 7B. And you should see they sound different. You be the judge. I don't have them both in my headphones, so going from memory, the EV should be a brighter sounding microphone. The 7B will be warmer, darker. It won't have as much high end to it. And it's really a preference thing. People love this microphone. People love this microphone. They love them both. Michael Jackson sang Thriller on this microphone, right? I mean, this microphone is no slouch. This microphone, no slouch. They're different. But under normal circumstances, for most preamps, the 7B, not hot enough. And you need to add more preamp gain to it. And usually that comes in the form of a cloud lifter or something like that. I don't have my cloud lifter in line for this particular one, so I wanted you to hear side by side on how they work. But these are two microphones that you would use in the same situation. These are very commonly seen in like radio stations, for newscasters, for broadcasters. Many podcasters use these microphones for spoken word. They both have built-in pop filters. They're both extremely durable microphones. They're both big microphones. They're both dynamic microphones. They're both cardioid pattern microphones, which means they're not sensitive from the back, which means you put all your noise from behind the microphone, your computer fans, anything like that. If you're doing an interview, the other person is on their microphone, but their voice, if they're facing you, their voice won't end up in yours. Your voice won't end up in theirs. That cardioid pattern. You put the noise behind the microphone. Two different options, and really comes down to which one do you like better. This one should sound bassier. So when you get right up on these microphones, the Shure SM7B should sound bassier than if I get up right close to the EV RE27 should maybe not have as much bass. Now, Electro Voice will say that's part of their variable D technology that's built into the microphone. So as you get right up onto the microphone, your tone doesn't change, right? That's that variable D technology that's right in there, but you lose some of the proximity effect. Whereas if you go over to the 7B, you may get a bit more proximity effect. You may get more boom and authority in your voice, but it does change the tonal value of the microphone itself. So as you move around the microphone, the EQ changes. The actual sound of the microphone changes. It's up to you to decide. You may want that proximity effect. You may want to not have to bother with the proximity effect. There's no right or wrong here. It's the way it sounds. One more mic to put in here just so you can have a comparison. $499, $399. This one's a little bit less, but these are very much competitors. I don't have one, but there's also an RE20. Which is not as bright as the 27, we would also have as a comparison as a dynamic microphone. But as you can see, just one last thing, as we move off this microphone, you can see how quickly I fall off in value in sound. So I'm only about a foot off the microphone, and I should be quiet, whereas I can get right up on these microphones to make myself nice and loud. Very tolerant of being up close to these microphones. Got one more to show you. Hold on. Check, check, check. Okay, they look about the same. Okay, so we've added a new dynamic microphone to the mix, and this one now, just as in the beginning I showed you two Electro Voice magazines, two Electro Voice microphones. This is two Shure microphones. This is two opposite ends of the spectrum for the dynamic microphones. This one is the Shure SM58. The Shure SM58 is like a stage singer's microphone. This one is a cardioid pattern microphone, which is especially helpful. So it doesn't pick up the sound of the crowd. It doesn't pick up the sound of the monitors when the singer is performing. It can be right up close to it. This also has the reputation of being practically a hammer. Extremely tolerant of abuse, extremely tolerant of handling noise, built-in shock mount. Just like the 635, this microphone is not as hot as the microphone. Now, this one, while it's a handheld microphone, won't be as useful as the 635. The 635 being an omnidirectional microphone, which means even if the reporter doesn't move the microphone between the faces during an interview, it's still going to pick up both voices. Whereas this one, because it's a more directional microphone, if you've seen it where the interviewer has the microphone pointed toward themselves and doesn't remember to point it towards the person they're interviewing and you can't hear them, probably encountered that before. That's why you might not want a cardioid or a super cardioid pattern microphone for interviews where you're moving that microphone back and forth, because it's designed to reject sound from the other side. And if your interviewee is on the other side and you're doing a single handheld microphone interview, field interview or something like that, makes it so it doesn't work. But you can see that these two microphones should sound tonally similar to each other. They don't sound the same. Different capsules, different technologies, different price points by a mile, $100, $399. But I think they do have like the Shure sound. They don't sound like the EV microphones, but you will see this microphone on stages around the world. It's an extremely popular microphone, extremely durable microphone. I don't know that they're great voiceover microphones. I think they're they sound a little muffled to me, but if you just need a good, durable microphone, one that you can perform with, one that you can take on stage, one that's like if you're a performer, buy an SM58 and use that as your microphone, so you have to put your mouth on somebody else's grubby microphone. This is the microphone. A lot of people say this is the microphone to get. You'll also see the Shure SM57, and it's really the grill that's different. This one has more of a grill for a mouth to go up to, whereas the SM57 has this other kind of grill that's really good for getting close to instruments and to speaker grills. If you took this basket off, you'd essentially have an SM57. So that's the 7B versus the SM58. I'm just going to bring back the Electro Voice 635 so you can hear a difference between the two handheld microphones. One sec. Okay, so are these pretty close? They look pretty close. Okay, so here are, just going back to the original Electro Voice 635ND, comparing it to the SM58. Both of these microphones could be considered industry standard microphones. They're extraordinarily common. You will see these all over the place. As you'll be able to see, I'll switch back and forth, you'll be able to see they don't sound anything alike. So my ears, as I think about how these sound, they don't sound alike. Neither of them sound particularly bad. They're not studio quality microphones. The purpose of these microphones is not to pick up every last nuance of a voice. They are made to be durable, handheld, strong, and they're there to survive myriad terrible conditions and still get the sound. This is more about getting the sound than how perfect the sound is. This one on stage to reject the crowd, to be able to not deal with feedback from the monitors, to be able to have the singer drop it to the floor, to spin it around and do all the things that performers do with it. And this one to be out in the field. You're getting interviews at a forest fire, in flood conditions, in all these really terrible environmental conditions. The 635 is going to work. In concerts, the SM58 is going to work. Two different scenarios, two different industries, but we're still in audio, right? And they both sound good. They both capture the sound. I'm not sure that sound good is the thing when we compare it to like a lot of the condenser microphones that we talk about on this channel, but this is two different aspects of sound and audio gathering that you should be aware of. So if you're going to do man on the street type interviews, you would choose the 635 over the SM58. If you were a podcaster that's also going to perform in front of groups, you're trying to capture storytellers or something like that, an SM58 is more the one you want because the 635 is going to pick up the crowd. The 58 is not. So you can see how there's different aspects, different purposes behind these microphones. So that's it. I don't have a recommendation. This is just mostly for you to see about dynamic microphones, how they sound, when they might be used. And I hope that helps. I hope there's if you're looking for a dynamic microphone, now you have a better sense of when they're to be used, what they're for, and how they sound. That's it. I hope this helps. Now, go get yourself a dynamic microphone, interview somebody, or go perform on stage and record something amazing. Thanks.